Videotapes, journals, and correspondence. The massive evidence gathered from bin Laden's compound. What has the Justice Department learned? We ask Attorney General Eric Holder, our guest on the show. And on the last word, Indiana's First Lady Sherry Daniels steps into the political spotlight, testing 2012 waters for her husband. And we begin the program with Attorney General Eric Holder. General, thank you so much for being with us. We got a treasure trove of intelligence from bin Laden's home, and intelligence officials now are saying that he had goals of killing U.S. senior officials, including the president. Was this specific? How much do we know about how far advanced this was?
Well, I'm not sure we have any plots that we can say were particularly well advanced. On the other hand, we did see that he had a number of goals to do things that he wanted to do around the anniversary, the 10th anniversary of September the 11th, certain people who he wanted to harm. I wouldn't say that they had advanced the operational stage, but he was clearly a person who was still pulling the levers in the al-Qaeda organization.
Including top officials of the United States government.
No, that's true, yeah.
There has been reported about a plot. He was scheming to attack railroads. What other targets and what specifically have you been able to do to respond to what we've learned?
Well, we have certainly sent things out. The Department of Homeland Security as well as the FBI sent out what's called a tear line around our country to raise the awareness around rail transportation so that people would be more cognizant of potential threats there. And we're still in the process of going through this material to get a better sense of what it is we might expect in the short term and over the long term.
Do you think in the short term we're in more danger because of any kind of reaction from his community?
I think that potential is there. I particularly worry about what we call the lone wolves, people who, for whatever reason, want to make a statement, avenge the death of bin Laden. And these are people who are generally hard to track and who can act almost spontaneously in this country or in other countries.
As you know, former Vice President Cheney and Defense Chief Rumsfeld said that enhanced interrogation, waterboarding, was essential to the intelligence in getting bin Laden. Are they right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, one has to look at this whole question of enhanced interrogation techniques, and I think what Senator McCain said on the Senate floor a few days ago, I think was particularly relevant. Torture does not get you relevant information, good information all the time. In fact, probably not most of the time. People will tell their interrogators what they think they want to hear in order to stop the interrogation.
So it did not play a central role in this?
We got this information from a variety of sources, and it's not clear to me, at least, that the information that we got from those enhanced interrogation techniques is what ultimately led to bin Laden.
You mentioned Senator McCain. He is an opponent of torture, as you know, but he said it's time now to stop your department's investigation of former CIA interrogators. Will you?
Well, we're working through that. I think we've made a lot of progress. And what I think people have to remember is that we said we would not investigate anybody who followed what we consider very flawed advice from the Office of Legal Counsel in the Justice Department during the Bush administration. If they relied in good faith on what the Justice Department said they could do, they were not going to be investigated. And I think we are pretty close to the end of a substantial portion of that investigation.
When can you think you might close that out totally?
Oh, I don't think we're looking at an extended period of time. I don't think we're looking at months. I think that we're looking at at weeks before we'll have
weeks in the whole, and will be resolved one way or another.
I think substantial portions of it will be resolved within weeks.
Okay. Bin Laden was at the top of our most wanted terrorist, the worst terrorist in the world, and he's gone now. Who is the top target? Who scares you the most? Is it Zawahiri, his number 2 man, or is it al-Awlaki, the head of al-Qaeda in Yemen?
Yeah, I mean,
where's the threat?
Well, I think the threat, it's interesting. I think the threat comes from the affiliates. Certainly Awlaki would be one of the people I'd be concerned about. Core al-Qaeda, I think, has certainly been weakened, and who knows what impact Zawahiri will have. I also worry a great deal about people who become radicalized within the United States or in other countries in their basements or interacting with friends, and who then take upon themselves the notion that they're going to try to do something on behalf of this crazy cause. So I worry not only about the affiliates, but the individuals as well.
Did I read you right that Awlaki, however, may be actually more of a global threat than Zawahiri?
Well, we certainly know that Awlaki wants to strike within the United States. Al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula has tried to do things in the United States already with the printer that they tried to send over. The impact, their interaction with the Detroit airplane bomber. Yeah, I worry a great deal about Awlaki, a great deal about Awlaki.
Welcome back. Talking tough on the deficit and debt ceiling. The budget political theater is on full display in Washington. Bloomberg News White House correspondent Hans Nichols and congressional reporter Julie Davis join me now to talk about it. Julie, Speaker Boehner, Leader McConnell said no debt ceiling increase without substantial cuts in spending and no taxes. Chuck Schumer says no way you can do it without revenues, and their Medicare proposal's off the table. Are we just posturing, or are we really at an impasse?
Well, it's mostly posturing. I mean, there's no doubt that the two parties are deeply divided philosophically and politically, obviously, on this question of how you get at the debt. But I think, you know, everyone from President Obama to Speaker Boehner acknowledges that the debt limit is going to have to be raised, and they're going to have to come to terms on some debt reduction deal, however incremental, to get there. So
there'll be a down payment as opposed to the grand bargain. The Gang of Six, we talk about it a lot. Is it given away to the Gang of Biden?
Well, there's no question that the Gang of Six has been eclipsed by this bipartisan group at the White House. The momentum that they had on their side and their importance was that they were the only bipartisan game in town talking about an issue that everyone acknowledges is not going to be solved unless Republicans and Democrats can get together. So to the degree that they're no longer the only group that's talking about this, and President Obama is obviously involved now, they have been somewhat eclipsed. They may still reach a deal. It may be part of what the Biden group ends up accepting as the final deal, but this is going to be an Obama-Boehner production, maybe with an assist from Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate.
Hans, as Julie says, the president has become actively involved. They're wheeling him out to meet with everybody. Is the White House optimistic or pessimistic about prospects?
They're optimistic, and they'll take the optimism and they'll raise you to confident. That's what you're hearing privately, publicly from White House officials. In hushed tones sometimes, though, you almost hear sympathy for the position that Boehner's in, that he's in a tough spot, and that a lot of his public posturing, they're willing to discount some of it because privately they think they're a lot closer. They're making baby steps towards this deal. Not strides, no grand bargain, as you said, but they are getting there. They feel like they're heading in the right direction.
Well, Julie, how does John Boehner walk back then? He said no tax increases.
Well, it's difficult to walk back, and I think that's why you're hearing the lines are being drawn so loudly, because inevitably in any deal there's going to have to be some give and take. Now, I think that what Republicans need to do is identify what is it that they really are going to need to have in order to give a little bit on the revenue side if they can at all. Does that mean that there's going to have to be Medicaid cuts that Democrats agree to? Maybe that will be a way that they could agree to say, okay, maybe some of the tax loopholes that everyone agrees need to be closed and have agreed on for a long time should be closed. Maybe that is on the table.
And the political calculations then in general on both sides, I mean, do they think it's playing in their favor or not, if you're a Democrat and if you're a Republican?
Well, Republicans certainly would tell you that if you ask the public what they're concerned about right now, it's about the economy and getting a handle on this debt. And so they're being seen as the people who want to cut spending and really be serious about this problem. They think that works in their favor. Well, Democrats will say, that's true, but if you ask people, would they rather have tax hikes or have their Medicare taken away? Well, they say that people would really rather have the tax increases than have a program that they depend on and that has been successful to them taken away.
Hans, has President Obama have any lines in the sand or any things that he said he won't go beyond? Or
Yes, in his meetings with both Democrats and Republicans privately this week at the White House, he says no overall spending cap. It just isn't demographically feasible. That's a blow to folks like Senator Corker, Senator McCaskill. What you're hearing is that you could have a percentage cap of deficit spending. That's what's acceptable to the president. But in terms of
explain
overall,
the difference between an overall cap and a percentage cap of deficit spending.
You have an overall cap of what outlays are, and that locks you into what you can spend. If you do it on the percentage of deficit, then you have a little more wiggle room in terms of how much you're raised through taxes.
So that's whether you also have revenues as part of any component or not. It's really the fundamental argument that Julie was talking about earlier. Do you have a balanced package or do you have a spending-only package?
That's right. And the president's saying it needs to be balanced. Everyone recognizes that. He's also saying to both sides, including people in his own party, you're going to have to give some too. The template for all of this is the stopgap spending bill they did to avert the shutdown earlier this year. The problem with that, they skated right up to the line. The White House wants to keep that analogy, but they want to stop it when they talk about the timeline because it's not good if we're talking about this in July.
Hans, let me ask you about something else. Commerce Secretary may not be the most important job in the world, but the White House has known for months that Gary Locke was leaving. Yet here we are mid-May, no secretary with an administration that says it's trying to court business. I've never seen an administration in 40 years in Washington that moves so slowly on appointments. What's the problem?
Well, they can't. They need to find someone that's acceptable to both the business community and has a clean vet, and that's one of the problems with reaching out to CEOs. But look, the fundamental paradox of the president's decision-making on this is that on the hard ones, Somali pirates, bin Laden, he pulls the trigger pretty quickly. He's pretty decisive. On the personnel matters, he dithers, he dickers. Robert Gibbs, Elizabeth Warren, you can tick down the list of places they just haven't been ready to make a decision. Commerce is another one. It's down to 3 final candidates. The CEO's in the mix. The other 2, Tim Romer, Ambassador Kirk, they look less likely at getting it. It could come any day now, but it's been too long already.
You mentioned bin Laden a minute ago. Pakistan-U.S. relations really heading south. White House worried?
Worried, but also not coming out publicly saying that the president will be making a trip, like he said he would last October, to Pakistan. It's hard to see how this relationship is going to improve until the White House says some sort of signal that they're willing to work with the Pakistan political structure and the military structure. General Kayani, the chief of staff there, he's making a lot of rounds this week in Pakistan. Not really pro-U.S. His posture is pretty negative.
Julie, what's the mood on the Hill, Pakistan and the war in Afghanistan?
Well, I think, following the bin Laden death, there's definitely a lot of questions being raised about, well, why are we in this relationship with Pakistan? What are we getting out of it? And are they telling us what we need to know? And there's going to be discussion, a pretty serious discussion about the level of aid and who the aid is provided to in Pakistan. You have people like Lindsey Graham of South Carolina saying, we can't cut off the aid. They have nuclear weapons, but we really need to figure out where the aid is going and if it makes sense the way we have it structured now.
And support dropping for the war?
On Afghanistan, I think there have been reservations for a long time. This has just sort of pushed them to the fore, and people are saying, can we do this with fewer troops? Can we do this with the unmanned drones? And I think, there's on the Democratic side, there's some latitude being given to President Obama, but that may not last too long if people don't think that he's moving quickly enough to wind things down.
Okay, Julie Davis, Hans Nichols, thank you both very much. And when we come back, keeping the pressure on Qaddafi as Libyan rebels make gains and Obama wades into the immigration debate. The last word right after this break. Welcome back. We'll go to Margaret, Carlson, and Cato Byrne in just a moment. But first, NATO intensified its airstrikes in Libya this week as rebels recaptured the airport in Misrata. Is Qaddafi's hold weakening? Bloomberg's Middle East correspondent Lara Setrakian joins me now from Dubai. Lara, you have a sense that maybe things are at a tipping point in Libya?
Well, Alan, with the caveat that most of the information we're getting is from the opposition side, it does look like they've broken the stalemate. They were taking back the momentum. You mentioned Misrata, but they're really taking back some of the major cities across the west of Libya and continuing to push toward Tripoli. And that's where the game really ends. They're telling us that the plan for Tripoli is to really lay siege from inside, that they have opposition cells already activated, that they've taken some parts of the city, NATO airstrikes intensifying over the capital, and once that happens, they say give it a few weeks, maximum 3 months, the game will be over. One interesting note on the market reaction, analysts telling us they do expect the price of oil to drop precipitously if and when he does leave.
You spent a day with a rebel shadow cabinet with some of their tribal leaders this week. Do you have a sense that they're becoming a more cohesive force?
They are. They're getting more organized. They have policy and planning teams looking at resourcing, reconciliation, really trying to plan for what they call the future free Libya. And they see themselves as the legitimate government of Libya. And more of the key players in this game geopolitically are treating them like that. They do need resources. The designated central bank governor told me they need $3 billion in operating budget, that all of the pledged billions from the international community, from Washington, haven't hit their coffers. And they're really looking at ways to shore up what they have and really push it forward.
While we're talking about generally good news, let me go to Iran. Their calls for Ahmadinejad to be impeached. Has he become an embarrassment for the Ayatollahs?
He's becoming an albatross for the Ayatollahs. The supreme leader, Khamenei, backed him in 2009. He's been stuck with him since. And Ahmadinejad has really started to overstep his domain. And that's where he's gotten in trouble over the past few weeks. Al, the game used to be between conservatives and reformists. Now it's conservatives versus conservatives. The Ahmadinejad camp versus the supreme leader's camp. And guess who ends up on top? It's not Ahmadinejad. He's also become a laughingstock. Contacts in Tehran tell me people are laughing at him for what they see as political suicide. Already calls for impeachment. They could grow louder. But again, none of this, really clear from the outside. Of course, significant implications for what we want from Iran, the nuclear policy change, and some sign that the Islamic Republic is moving toward a better direction.
Okay. Lara, we're going to come back to you, particularly with this Libya story in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much. Let me turn to Kate and Margaret. Now, Margaret, a lot of attention this week about Mitch Daniels' wife and marital situation. His wife once left him and his daughters, married somebody else, came back, and they were remarried. Is this an issue?
Well, it may be an issue in the primary. Listen, we all know people we admire and respect who do foolish things when they fall in love at the wrong time. Sherry Daniels did that. The story, however, does have a happy ending. She came back and remarried the father of her children, and they've been together ever since. But I found out this week that Republican opponents are passing around the name of the former husband, the person she married in the interim, and his family. So there will be opposition research for reporters to follow, and it could become a bigger problem.
Kate, I may be missing something, but I think this is the anti-Gingrich story. I think this is really family values being celebrated at the end.
Well, it's not an issue in the respect of what it tells about the fitness for office of the candidate.
Yeah.
You know, we've had those in the past,
Right.
certainly, with Bill Clinton, Jennifer Flowers, and Whitewater. But it's certainly an issue for the Daniels family. All candidates weigh the enormous toll a campaign will take on the family in a general sense. I think this is even a harder decision for the Daniels because it focuses on the spouse's behavior, a little like Hillary Clinton and cattle futures, but far more personal and private. And to open up your family and your daughters to that kind of scrutiny, you can see why this has been a really deep concern on the part of the governor.
Let me turn to another issue, immigration. Is it a cutting issue as we approach the presidential campaign, and which side does it favor?
Well, clearly the White House thinks that the appearance that President Obama favors comprehensive immigration reform is a big plus for him. They're looking to energize disappointed Hispanic voters for next November. Now, over 2 years, of course, he did nothing to deliver on this promise. I don't think he'll do much more than the appearance and hope that does the trick, because if it became real, then it would benefit opponents of comprehensive immigration reform because the border is not secure. He has not aggressively enforced laws in the interior, which is what people want to see, and only when that happens will they be open to regularizing status for
Margaret,
illegals.
Carlson?
But as the president said this week, you could put a moat across the border with man-eating alligators in it, and the border will never be secure enough for Republicans who oppose all immigration as amnesty. Look at what happened to the DREAM Act, the most benign piece of legislation. The most sympathetic group, that is children brought here by their parents. The most worthy of those who've gone to college for 2 years or in the military for 2 years, and a sponsor of it, Senator Orrin Hatch, is now against it.
Do you think it helps the Democrats?
It does,
Okay.
yes.
I want to thank both of you for not leaving me on this program, and I want to thank you for being here, and thanks all of you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Political Capital is a production of Bloomberg Television.